Our speaker for today needs no introduction. He's the poet, the psychoanalyst, and the psychiatrist. We request Professor Salman Akhtar sir to begin his address.
Since we are talking about serious matters, therefore, we need discipline and decorum. But we don't need a kind of ponderousness. So my suggestion is, listen to me with about 82% seriousness. That, I think, would do the trick. Because if you try to listen to me 100% seriously, you will find a lot of faults and you will be lost. And so would be my message. What is the message? The message basically is this: that psychoanalysis is nothing so mysterious, nothing so esoteric, and nothing so obsolete either. Of course, the form of psychoanalysis that Freud started is obsolete. There's no doubt about that. Anybody who tells you otherwise is a liar. Freud used to see his patients for 50 minutes each, 6 times a week. That is 300 minutes a week. Most psychoanalysts now see patients 4 times a week for 45 minutes. So 4 times 45 is 180 minutes. That's down from 300. And now the International Psychoanalytic Association has even recognized that this work can be done in 3 times a week, which will mean 135 minutes, which is less than half of what Freud used to do. On the other hand, Freud used to see patients for 3 months and quotes cured them. Some maximum length of treatments used to go 1.5 years. Now treatments go 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. Also, during Freud's days, the focus was on symptoms. Somebody was blind, somebody had paralyzed hand, somebody was having a neurotic cough, somebody was afraid that rats will get into his father's body, somebody was traumatized by a dream that they had seen as a child. Basically, symptomatic treatment, deep, but treatment nonetheless palliative. Because as doctors, we know that there's etiology, then there's pathology, then there's symptomatology, and then there's treatment. And the treatment is of 2 kinds. One is of symptoms, which is called palliative treatment. One is of pathology, which is called curative treatment. So, it is not that psychoanalysis, please, especially I'm addressing the young people, and I suppose with an exception of 1 or 2 people, everybody is younger than me, but I'm talking of the real young ones. Please don't exoticize psychoanalysis. It's not something weird. It's just a kind of psychotherapy. It's just a kind of psychotherapy. Don't make it something magical, mysterious or something. And I will give you examples how I'm a psychoanalyst. How does a psychoanalyst work? It's basically a kind of psychotherapy which has certain structural requirements, such as what? Such as the frequency, I think. I prefer 4 times a week. Okay, 4 times a week. Second, ideally the patient should be on the couch, lying, where the analyst is sitting here, patient is lying that way, so that the patient is not able to see the analyst. Why? Why? There are many advantages of seeing the patients lying on the couch. One advantage is that the patient can say more personal things, more shame-laden things, more strange thoughts that appear in the mind, and not be concerned about and not be affected by the person's face. The doctor is looking at them. So it's hard when we are looking at each other to say difficult things. Now, even this idea is rather simple. Just think, when you can pay back the money that you borrowed from Dr. Srivastav, what do? you send him an email. You send him an email. Or when you want to ask for more money than she is willing to pay, you say, I'll write you an email. Rather than saying, ye to paise aap kam de rahi. Email, nobody is seeing anybody, you can say what you want to say. Whenever I'm invited to give talks, I never say yes, no right away. I say, send me an email. That gives me a chance to think about it. That gives me a chance to decide whether I want to do it. That gives me a chance to decide how much money I want to ask, and so on and so forth. So the patient is lying. That way, the patient can reveal more things. One. Second, that when you put somebody supine, lying down, we all, you, Vinay, you, Asta, you, all of us have spent a year of our life only lying down. The first year, when we couldn't walk. Lying down, the supine position is where we started our life from, and where most likely all of us will end up as Muslims buried in a grave, Hindus with minor exceptions of Lingayat Brahmins who are not cremated lying down. Some of them are cremated sitting up and some of them are buried sitting up. That's a different, but that's a rare exception. But in the end, we begin with all fours and we end up on all fours every evening. This biped status that evolution, or if you believe in God, has gifted us is short-lasting and is not permanent. The supine status is the permanent status. Each day we have to lie down and become a child all over again. So the supine status itself induces certain kinds of feelings and thoughts and impulses and fantasies that cannot be had while standing up. I mostly speak the truth only when I'm lying down. This was supposed to be a joke. No, this is not how you listen to me. I'm very sorry. If you see, I told you listen to me with 81% seriousness. You are listening to me 100% seriously. This is not going to work for both of us. I'll be disappointed and you would miss a bunch of things. Relax. No good education happens in an atmosphere of anxiety and fear. All good education happens in an atmosphere of collaboration and friendship. So please, just relax. Don't get too tense. There's nothing so big about this. So now, the supine position also creates awe. A baby looks up there. And when the mother picks up, he gets breast. When the father picks up, he gets to watch a cricket game. When the uncle picks up, the uncle throws him in the air. The lying down position creates expectations of awe, of excitement, of nourishment, of adventure. That is why, third, lying down, because it paralyzes, it induces an artificial paralysis of motor action. You can't do very much when you're lying down. You can slap somebody lying down, etc. So it induces an artificial motor paralysis, an iatrogenic, transient, and artificial, as if motor paralysis, which forces the fantasy and emotion into the retro direction of fantasy. Because when we are acting, when we're doing things and acting, then the mind cannot fantasize as much. When we're not acting, then the mind can fantasize. Please close the door from which you entered. Thank you. दरवाजे की भी इज्जत है सरकार कुछ. Anyway, so now what happens is psychoanalysis requires the person to be lying on the couch 4 times a week. This is the structure that is needed. and a great degree of continuity. Usually these days, a good analysis of a reasonably mild neurotic person takes about 5 years or so. In case of Asta, maybe 3.5. In case of some other people in this audience, maybe 7. So it depends on how much crap you have in your mind. I was in analysis 5 times a week with one interruption for various reasons for about total of 8 years. And you can imagine, and still a lot of bullshit is left inside of me, So you can imagine how much I had before the analysis. You can see that. But it has helped me greatly. It has helped me greatly. यार ये दरवाजा क्यों नहीं बंद करते हैं? I think it has to do with some lack of separateness between human beings. अंदर बाहर एक ही चीज है. ऐसा नहीं है. अंदर अलग चीज है, बाहर अलग चीज है. Please make sure there that the door remains closed. Thank you. So now, those are the main structural things. The other thing is that the therapist is required to have 3 attitudes. And in past they used to be so rigidly observed, but now we know that we can fluctuate and titrate and judiciously change them. One was anonymity, meaning the patient shouldn't know very much about us. So unlike an ophthalmologist, unlike a neurologist, unlike a rheumatologist, surgeon, we cannot keep pictures of our wives and children and husbands and sisters and brothers in our house, in our office. That's not a good thing to do. Same way, we cannot have religious symbols in the office. Same way, we cannot have political slogans in our office. The less the person knows about us, the better it is, because they will then mobilize their own fantasy about us, through which we will learn about their internal world. So anonymity, neutrality, we don't take sides too much about what a human being should do or should not do. Unless an innocent person is being injured, a child, then we are required, at least in the United States where I work, we are required to intervene and report. If a patient of mine tells me that they're having sex with a 5-year-old child, I'm required and allowed by law to break confidentiality and call the police. I have to report. If a person says that I am going to kill such and such person tonight, the terrorist of law permits me to break confidentiality. So that unless somebody is going to do suicide, homicide, sexual abuse of children, those are the 3 conditions in which we do act. Otherwise, we're neutral about things. A person has an extramarital affair. Should they have an affair? Should they not have an affair? It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is what are they doing? What do they understand about it? What have they thought about it? What does it mean to them? Sometimes having an extramarital affair may be pathological. Sometimes not having one may be pathological. That's also true. Human life is not simple. Sometimes a divorce is pathological, sometimes a marriage is pathological. We don't know. We have to listen. We have to open our heart for surprises. So now, anonymity, neutrality, and abstinence. Abstinence means not only that we don't eat and drink and smoke during the sessions, but it also means that we don't gratify childish wishes of the patient. We of course have to gratify their mature needs to be respected, to be loved, to be held in a reliable, respectful, empathic manner, but not, the patient says, I want to marry you. You can marry a patient. There's an old saying, which is kind of a little sexist, and I apologize for that. I didn't make this up. Take a patient for a wife, and you will have a patient for life. So that's an old saying wise, it's not bad. It's not bad. A little sexist, but what the hell. So now, please close the door. Thank you. So now, these three are basic requirements: anonymity, abstinence, and neutrality. I'm only talking of psychic and physical structure of analysis. This is how then we work. What are we trying to do? What is the purpose of psychoanalysis? What are we trying to accomplish? What we're trying to accomplish would be based upon what we assume is the problem. So what is our assumption about the problem? Our assumption is that this person who has come to seek our help is not living fully in today. This person is still living in yesterday. A man comes, says, I'm terrified of dogs. Now, you ask him, have you been bitten by a dog? No. Your mother? No. Father? No. Brother? Sister? Wife? Husband? Son? Daughter? Best friend? Neighbor? He doesn't know anybody who has been bitten by a dog. But he's afraid. So then you ask him, if nobody you know has been bitten by a dog, then how come you're afraid that dog will bite you? Why? And what does the person say? I don't know. And what should you say? Very good. This is the best thing you have said since you have entered my office. You don't know. That means you don't know about a part of your own mind. And that is the part that you and I are going to open up. Then you ask him, how long have you been afraid of dogs? 90% of the chances the patient will say, oh, I've been always afraid. My answer would be, no, I disagree with you. When you were 1 day old, you didn't even know what a dog was. 2 days old? No. 5 days old? No. So, don't tell me it was always. It has begun sometimes. So, I would like you to now take 1 minute, no hurry to speak, think for a second. I'll be quiet, you be quiet. Think about the first dog that you got afraid of. And the patient thinks. Patient says, I think I was like 5 or 6 years old. Now you see, you don't make fun of the patient, but you're already impressed. How always changed into 5 or 6 years? In 1 minute. 5 or 6 years. Where was this dog? Whose dog was this? This dog belonged to Raja Sahab Ramkot. Raja Sahab Ramkot. That's very interesting. Tell me about him. Now the story begins to unfold. And so on and so forth. So, we listen. Our assumption is that the person is not living fully in today. In today, there are problems. There may be financial problems, physical problems, and minor psychological problems that are solved by friendships, that are solved by a reasonably good marriage, that are solved by listening to poetry and reading literature, seeing a good movie, having a good drink, going for a long walk, praying to God or something. Today ka problem is not a big deal. Today's problem is no big deal. The problem of yesterday is like a ghost, Vetal Kashav. That follows the person. And the person is now trapped in that and doesn't know what is bothering him. A man gets married to somebody far beneath his cultural, social, intellectual status. And then realizes and then gets divorced. Then he marries a severely mentally ill woman. And then he realizes and then he decides that this is wrong and gets divorced. Then he marries a third woman who's Japanese and doesn't understand. He's from Kerala. His language is Malayalam. And now he's bitching and moaning and complaining that my wife doesn't understand me. Is the problem in the wife or is it the problem in the man? What is he doing? He is making it appear as if it's today's problem. It is not today's problem. There's something in him that is leading him to difficult relationships where he has to prove, where he has to sacrifice, where he has to become victorious, where he has to change the other person. So we hear about this man's childhood. And what do we find? That his mother had severe rheumatoid arthritis and was bedridden ever since he was 3 years old and died when he was 9. Now we know, we have some hint what's going on. Psychoanalysis is a treatment of those emotional problems that seem contemporary but are not contemporary. They are shadows from the past that the person is suffering from and is compelled to repeat, is trapped like a prisoner and is possessed by a ghost of his own past that keeps haunting him and never lets it go. This is what psychoanalysis is. And our attempt is to help the person locate this ghost. And Freud was right. You cannot kill a ghost in absentia. You have to call the ghost. A ghost cannot be killed in absentia. If the ghost is in Jodhpur, you can't kill that ghost. The ghost has to be in this room to be killed. As a result, not only the problem has to be recognized, but has to be lived through. Lived through. So what does the patient say to me? The same patient who married 3 times, and 3 times inappropriately, 3 times complaining, 3 times divorced. What does he say to me? You know, Dr. Akhtar, I think you're charging me too little money. I think you're such a good doctor and you're helping me so much. Baby, can you close the door, please? Thank you. So, that you're charging me too little money. And this is too little. I want to increase the fee. Why? I ask him, have you gotten a raise? No. Has somebody died in the family, left you money? No. Same income. And the patient is himself a doctor and reasonably affluent, not in our field, in some other field. But suddenly, in 6 months, 6 months in treatment, he is insistent on paying more money. As I block that and try to open as to why? Why? Turns out a fantasy emerges. The fantasy is, this is happening in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. The fantasy is that since I'm an immigrant, brown skin, and Muslim, I must not have good practice. And hence, he must help me. And he should help me out and make my life better. This is the ghost. This is the ghost right here. This tendency to rescue and this tendency to help and this tendency to change the other person, to make them grateful, to sacrifice, it goes back to desire to cure the dying mother. Now the ghost is here. As the discussion of the fee begins, all kinds of emotions get unraveled. and his very disturbing thoughts about my poverty, my, quotes, imagined poverty. I'm actually quite well off. If you don't believe, come and see my house. Thank you. Now at least some people are responding, so that's a little nice. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So now, but the patient now is deeply worried that I'm immigrant, I'm brown-skinned, I'm Muslim, nobody might come to see me, may not have good practice, maybe and being a Muslim, I might have 13 children or some such thing. He has all kind of thoughts, and all kind of things begin to come out. Having 13 children will mean I'll have to have 11 more. The time is running out, to have 11 more now, So here's the situation. This is the ghost. This is what psychoanalysis is about. Nothing so mysterious. But for the ghost to emerge, one requires silence, patience, waiting, and certain methods to open. Just like in surgery, you have to take a kidney out. You can't just put your hand in and pull the kidney out. You have to cut the skin and cut the fascia and then have put bleeders and artery forceps. There are all kind of methods must be. You can see how little I know about surgery. Same way for this ghost to come. And then we found a very interesting thing. We found that even if the ghost is here, and even if the person has now met the ghost and recognized him, a part of the person actually wants to keep the ghost. It's not that the patient who wants to get better really wants to get better. That's also an amazing part. The patient also wants to stay sick. Now here is a small tip outside of this conversation, and that is, what is the difference between mentally healthy people and mentally sick people? Only two. I started psychiatric residency on 1st January 1969. There's one person in this room who I know from 1 year later, from 1970. In this room there's a person who was 1 year my junior in residency, Dr. Anirudh Kala. We go back a long time and have suffered each other a lot. So anyway, now, and loved each other also, of course. So now, in this, whatever, 56, nearly 60 years, I have learned only two differences between mentally ill people and mentally healthy people. One difference is, mentally ill person has this much mental illness and this much mental health. Mentally healthy person has this much mental health and this much mental illness. Nobody is free of mental health. Nobody is free of mental illness. That's one. The second is the relationship between the ill part and the healthy part is a difficult, contentious, problematic one in the mentally ill person. The mentally ill part tells the healthy part, you are sick. The mentally ill part says, I don't exist. The mentally ill part says, you don't exist. The mentally ill part says, this treatment you're taking, that's crazy. Don't take this treatment. As against in mentally healthy person, the healthy part takes good care of mentally ill part. Like I take care of my good mentally healthy part, takes good care of my mentally ill part by saying, right now, don't come out. There are distinguished people sitting here, just be quiet right now. Or I say, you can come out after maybe 2 hours, we'll have a drink, then you can act up. Or I can say, go write poetry. Don't disturb people, go write a poem. And so on and so forth. Or I say, listen, I'll make some more money, take you for treatment. So there's a cordial relationship, a kind relationship between healthy and sick parts. But there's nobody who's completely devoid of both. Our job is to help the person find the ghost, recognize the ghost, bring the ghost alive here, and then to help negotiate his abandoning the ghost, which is not easy. Because in order to change life, you have to change yourself. And that's not easy. We become used to whatever nonsense we keep doing. This is psychoanalysis. Okay. So this was supposed to be the preface. Now let us talk about the real talk. Within the psychoanalyst live many people. A simple person who responds like an ordinary citizen, responds to things that go on like a simple way, inside. A complex person who has read theory, technique, and has many guiding principles to thought. And a novelist and a poet. Within the psychoanalyst, there live two organizers, a novelist and a poet. A novelist listens to the plot line, follows different sections of the plot, is able to go back and forth like flashbacks in a movie, knows that no story is ever told in ABC fashion. Jean-Luc Godard, the great film director from Paris, has said it the best way. Every story has a beginning, middle, and end. But in which order? But in which order? Many stories end first and then begin. Many stories are in the middle, always. Many stories never end. Many stories had no beginning. As a result, आगाज है जिनका कोई अंजाम नहीं है, वो ख्वाहिशें कि जिनका कोई नाम नहीं है. So, the novelist is looking for clues, is identifying important characters, is seeing which character resembles which other character and which character has been reproduced, in which form, where. Dr. N. Wig Saab was a sort of father figure for me. But then I left and I found Dr. Vamik Volkan, a Turkish psychoanalyst in USA who became like my father. Which character? Behind which Vamik Volkan, behind which Dr. Wig, behind which an uncle of mine, and behind which what? And so on and so forth. So the novelist is looking for characters. The novelist is looking for plot lines. The novelist allows back and forth between present and past, but is always searching for a coherent narrative. Follows the patient's thoughts, how they go, what is told, what is not told, what is emphasized, why, what is not emphasized, what's completely overlooked. Patient says, all I want is when I come home after a day's work, my wife give me 5 minutes of attention. If she sits with me for 5 minutes peacefully, that's all I want. That, is a lot of bullshit. Any man who's saying all he wants is wife's 5-minute attention is not true. Please don't believe this. This man is trying to say, I am such a noble soul, but my wife is a bitch. That's what he's trying to tell you. No, that's not the case. He has made up that case. And he's presenting himself as such a kind folk. All I want is 5 minutes attention of my wife. No, I don't believe that. So, the novelist is listening. What is said, what is not said, how it is said, which characters are speaking to which characters right now in this dialogue that's happening between me and him, me and the patient. A patient is buying a house. He's very preoccupied with that house. And as he should be, he's buying a house. And buying a house is not a small thing. It's a major investment of emotions, psychic energy, money, time, etc. So obviously he's preoccupied, and understandably so. Now, he keeps talking about the house, how big the house is, what is in it, what is not in it, what are its features, what's missing, what's the problem. It's a brand new house being built. Some 5-6 sessions pass, and I'm listening, and it suddenly dawns to me that he has told me everything about the house except the price of the house. And I'm stunned by the fact that why did he never mention how much the house cost? Now that's the story itself. That's the story itself. I mean, we can forgive these kinds of things in movies, and we can forgive, when something is off. But in real life, we have to be questioning. It's not hanging together. So I asked him, I said, excuse me, is there any particular reason that has prevented you from telling me the price of this house that you're buying? And I could see the patient gets tense, very tense. And he's now so loquacious, so flamboyant, so much talking about the house, he's completely silent. And he's having great difficulty. With help, he finally, sheepishly reveals that he was very frightened in telling me the price of the house. Why? What was your fear? He says his fear was that I might burst out laughing with contempt and with scorn, that for this little money you are so preoccupied and worried. I said, okay, do you think I'm the kind of person who, have you experienced me as a person who makes fun of people about money? We began talking more. Then a second fantasy arises, which is more devastating to him, and that is, what if his house costs more than my house? Then I will be very upset and very ashamed, according to him. And I'm again surprised. Why would I be upset? It's his house, it's not my house. It's his money, it's not my money. I'm not competing with him in anything. Now, had he written more books, maybe I'll be upset. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. Yeah. But, I'm not in this business of real estate. And having money is not my dharma, my life goal. So as a result, but he's afraid that he'll crush me by telling me the price of the house. So now we have two fears. One, that I will make fun of him if the house, in my estimation, is too cheap, or I will be humiliated if, in his estimation, the house is too expensive. Both are fantasies. Who is he competing with? Who is he worried about? Not me. It's nothing to do with me. It's the ghost. It's the ghost right here. Who's the ghost? That's the issue. Since it's not me, it's somebody else in the room that he's concerned about. When I was a little boy, 4, 5 years old, I used to pray to God. Not really. Don't get serious. Please, 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 please make me like my father. I thought he was so grand man. When I was 8 or 10, I became depressed because I said, oh my God, I'll never become like this grand man. When I became 16, I said, who the fuck wants to be like him? I thought he was bullshit. He was bullshit. I don't want to be like him. When I was 30, I was so proud that I was so different from him. When I was 58, 55, and not shaving, I would see the man in the mirror. And I said, oh my God, I have become like him. And then I went through, no. In some ways he was better than me. In some ways I'm better than him. I can do this thing better and he could do this thing better. And then a day came, I said, what bullshit is this? What am I doing? He was the son of his mother and father. He was born in 1914. People raised him. He was in 1914 father, 1914 mother. His father was a poet and a judge. His mother was a housewife. He grew up in a different situation. Mostly in Gwalior and then later on in Lucknow and Aligarh. I grew up in Lucknow, Aligarh, Chandigarh, Charlottesville, Virginia, Philadelphia. And I have a different father and different mother. And he had a different father. He's not my brother. So this whole thing that was going on in my head was a stupid boy's, a young boy's struggle with his father. Same thing here. The patient is saying, his house is more expensive or my house is more expensive. Who cares? Who cares? It's not a matter of today's concern. Whether your doctor owns a house which costs more or whether you own a house that costs more than your doctor. It's irrelevant. But not to him. That is how the novelist works. The novelist is not a truth seeker because truth cannot be found. There are 7 kinds of truths. Historical truth, physical truth, historical truth, narrative truth, poetic truth, legal truth, manufactured truth, and existential truth. There's not one kind of truth that anybody can settle on. The novelist is not a truth seeker. The novelist is willing to satisfy himself and the patient and settle for narrative truth. What is narrative truth? Narrative truth means, now you ask me what do you think happened when I was 3 years old? And I talked to you for 5 minutes. I don't know. How can I know? Of course I cannot know. And now perhaps you cannot know it either. But we can guess roughly based on our emotions, based upon the facts you have provided me, based upon my knowledge of psychoanalysis and developmental theory, etc. We can make up a relatively close story that should be plausible, that should be agreeable to both of us, and that should be helpful. That's called narrative truth. Narrative truth. That's what the novelist can do at best. So here is an example. A patient of mine, 57-year-old woman, whose mother died when she was 4 years, 11 months. The father remarried within a year, and the stepmother was very good. And she had an older brother who was very good. And the father was very good. So the father was good, the older brother was good, the stepmother was good. As a result, the wound got healed over, or sealed over would be a better thing to say. And she got a reasonable compensation and grew up to be a reasonable, nice, pleasant woman. Got married, had 2 children, and went into business. She had some business skill, became a very successful businesswoman. She stumbled into panic and very severe anxiety and some depressive feelings when her daughter started drinking too much. The daughter started drinking too much. And she couldn't watch her daughter destroying herself. So obviously the daughter had to seek treatment, but that's when she came seeking psychotherapy with me. As the analysis started, bit by bit, as the material opened, more and more unresolved, hidden grief at the death of the real mother came out. This was a protracted work for about 2 years, 4 times a week. There was nothing, all sessions were filled by the sorrow about the death of the mother. One day, she asked me a question. She says, what time, this is really happening, the patient is on the couch, I'm sitting here, the patient is lying here. What time do you think 5-year-old children go to sleep? What would you think? So I said, I don't really remember or know. Let me think. 7:45 or 8? Something like that, 7:45 p.m., 8 p.m., something like that. 5-year-old child going to sleep. She said, okay, let's suppose 8 p.m. My mother died at 3 p.m. The patient is talking. My mother died at 3 p.m. and I think my father told me about an hour later. So most likely it was 4 o'clock when my father told me that my mother has died. And if I went to sleep at 8 p.m., what was I doing for those 4 hours? Can you tell me, what do you think I was doing? Or can you help me recover that memory? It's very important for me that I know what I was doing in those 4 hours. Now, the fact is, I cannot find it. I cannot find what she was doing. This happened 53 years ago. In a city I never lived in, to a person I had never met till 2 years ago. But she was insistent, I need to know. It's very important for me to know, to feel whole, that what was I doing before I went to sleep that night between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock. So this is what is called narrative truth of the novelist part of the psychoanalyst. So I said, you know, the fact is that I do not know. And my fear is that you do not know it either. It is not that you knew and you registered and have forgotten. So we can unearth it as a repressed and forgotten memory. My sense is that it was never fully registered. Most likely, you must have walked around the house, sat here, stood there, touched a piece of furniture, touched your father's leg, stood with your brother, looked at things in a forlorn and lost way. But even this is a speculation. The only person who could have helped you remember those 4 hours and describe how the death of your mother is affecting you in those 4 hours was your mother. She could have helped you. She could have told you, beta, you're feeling this, you're doing this, mommy is dead now, and mommy will help you understand what is going on all. But the problem was she was dead. So there was nobody. Father must be upset. Brother was only 3-4 years older than you. There was nobody to help translate the fog of your feelings into written words, so that they could be properly stored, so they can be recalled. So a vague blob of affect floats. Because mommy, who could have taught you what you were feeling, was not there. But the good thing is, in a way, mommy is here today. Because she's trying to help you understand how confused you must have been. And how that confusion is still persisting. Because now I am your mother. And let us also not forget that we meet 4 times a week, 4 hours. So let us make sure that in our relationship, no 4 hours will happen in which I will abandon you. And that you will be on the couch and I'll be mentally elsewhere. I think that has to be made sure. Now this statement is a narrative truth. To render something implausible as plausible, something ineffable as understandable, something ephemeral as structured. This is the work of a novelist within the psychoanalyst. But the psychoanalyst is not only a novelist. The psychoanalyst is also a poet. When we say poet, what we mean is a different kind of mindset, a different kind of agenda, a different kind of attention, a different kind of attitude, a different kind of emotional relatedness to what is going on between me and the patient happens. This one is not interested in coherence. This one is not interested in plot. This one is not interested in characters. This one is not interested in what follows what and what happened before and what happened after and how they are linked. No. This one is interested in surprise, in mystery, in not knowing what Keats said, the negative capacity. On not knowing. The poetic attitude requires enormous patience, waiting, maintaining faith that if we are good and if we are doing good, good will happen. Quiet, patient, waiting, willing to be surprised, not in a haste to solve a problem, able to bear the arousal or arrival of strange metaphors which can catch one by surprise, even traumatize one, where one is not aware what one was thinking and why, and yet be open to that. Here is an example. Think about it. Kalpana ji, let's assume you have a friend by the name of Bharti. Now, one day you call Bharti and say, Bharti, we have not met for a long time. Can you come over, have dinner at our house? And Bharti, who's divorced, I'm making this up, Bharti, who's divorced, says, yes, Kalpana, of course I'd love to come, but by the way, I have started dating and I now have a male friend. Is it okay if I can bring him? And you say, of course, bring him. It'll be so nice. What's his name? She says, his name is Vinod. Good, I'd love to see Vinod. Bring him. Now, it's 6 o'clock in USA, in India 8 o'clock. So, you put on a nice sari, in USA you cook, in here your cook cooks, some differences, but what they have. The food is there, some munchies, some kebabs, some wine, some scotch, and you're now sari, put bindi and everything, and you and your husband are looking a very happy couple, you've invited people over. So now the doorbell rings and you open the door and Bharti is there. And hi. And Bharti's friend Vinod happens to be a handsome man, distinguished, but he has a beard this big, which is only on the halves of his face. The beard grows from here up to here, this long. And the other half of the face is completely clean shaved. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? It's simple, nothing. The answer is nothing. You say, please come in. You can't do anything. Of course not. The young people who are sitting there, if this happens, what do you do? The proper behavior is to say, please come in. Whatever is happening inside of you is your problem. That's not Bharti's problem. If Bharti decided to date a man who has half beard, and the man is not looking unhappy. So the problem to aapka hai na? It's your problem. It's not the couple's problem. And you have invited them for dinner. You have not invited them for interrogation. So what do? Nothing. You say, please come in. Now, you are a little troubled by it. And you want to sit again. You want to look, and then you avoid your gaze. And then, meanwhile, your husband is still getting dressed. So you walk in quickly. मैं आती हूँ 1 minute में. I'll come back in a minute. Go tell your husband, the man has a half a beard. Don't say anything about it. And ultimately, you say nothing about it if you're a good host. I mean, just imagine, let's suppose she walked in with a dwarf, 2 feet tall. What would you say? Nothing. आइए विनोद जी तशरीफ लाइए. What can you say? I didn't ask, Kalpana ji, how come you're wearing green sari? No, I didn't say it. You wore green sari, it's okay, बैठिए. That's the right thing. This is the poetic approach, where you are traumatized by what has happened. Same thing in the clinical situation. A patient may say something, not say something, a thought may come to you from within yourself that can shock you, traumatize you, but you remain quiet. And you wait. And you maintain faith. So now what happens? Vinod ji is sitting, and now your husband descends. Hi Vinod, how are you? Now he is acting completely cool because this man has already been prepared. The wife was traumatized. But Kalpana ji's husband is already acting very cool because she already went and told him that the man has half beard, so he is acting completely normal. And he says, so Vinod, what do? He says, I'm an architect. And they're talking, and good conversation. What would you have? I'll have some red wine. People start drinking. Conversation goes, another couple comes and joins, and they are also a little taken aback, but the conversation is flowing. 3 drink के बाद, उससे पहले तो कुछ होता नहीं है. Nothing happens before the 3rd drink. At the 3rd drink or after the 3rd drink, Vinod says, well, look, in case any of you are wondering about my half beard, I'll be glad to tell you the story about it. And then the story comes out. Which may have A, B, C, D, whatever, pain, trauma, defiance, who knows? Maybe, Vinod, is this being recorded? Okay, then I'll be careful. I was going to use some names, I'm not going to. But let's suppose that, yes? Yes, exactly. So now, that what happens? That but the booze is not free, Yes. So now what happens is that let's suppose, I'm not saying it's true. Let's suppose Vinod's father was a devout mullah who had a huge beard, And Vinod's mother was a tam bram भगवान की वर्शिपिंग करने वाली. तो उसने बेचारे ने आधा दाढ़ी रख ली, आधा हिंदू आधा मुसलमान बन गया. चल वो चल रहा है, क्या करे बेचारा. That's his way of, I mean, that's a caricatured explanation, of course. That's not the real story. That's not the real story. But the point is that having waited patiently, having waited with grace, and having borne the trauma of surprise with grace, and while retaining faith that if you are on the right track with the right intention and right spirit, good things will happen. The story will come out. That is the poetic spirit. So now, sometimes in clinical situation, the novelist speaks first and the poet speaks later. Sometimes in the clinical situation, the poet speaks first and the novelist speaks later. So here's an example of the novelist speaking first and poet speaking later. A patient of mine who's a very successful person, Jewish, and somehow, for various complex reasons, very ashamed of being a Jew. Very, very ashamed of being a Jew. So we worked on that, and he tries to pass himself off as Christian, as Gentile. Bit by bit, as the treatment progresses, the reasons for his self-hating Jewishness begin to be evident and begin to get worked through both in the there and then and here and now, in the sense that he thinks that I hate him because he is Jew. But actually it's he who hates himself for being Jew. So we work this through, we're working through, and things begin to be better and better and better. He was using one name, he had three-part name, ABC. One of them was a little Christian sounding, two were Jewish sounding. So he's always used only the Christian sounding name. Bit by bit he drops that, he starts using the Jewish sounding name. Then he becomes a member of a synagogue, which took him great courage to do because he hated being a Jew. That became all right. Bit by bit he's becoming better. One day he's invited to give a talk in one of the most prestigious clubs in the town, in the city I live, which till recently wouldn't admit black people, women and Jews. So he's invited to give a talk, and the talk is like 5 or 6 p.m. This session is at 3 p.m. So he comes, he's on the couch and he talks. He says, you remember today I'm going to speak in such and such place? I say, yes, I do. He says, by the way, I want to let you know, and the club is all WASP, white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. So he said, by the way, I want to let you know, make sure, he raises his finger lying down on the couch, I want to make sure that you know, I'm no longer ashamed of being a Jew. So I said, you're sounding like Richard Nixon to me. You know Richard Nixon's famous sentence, I'm not a crook. So I said, you're sounding like Richard Nixon. So patient is smart, he gets it, he laughs, he says, you think I still am? I said, yes. This statement tells me, unfortunately. Now, meanwhile, something else had happened. He had found out that I was Muslim. And he was deeply ashamed of my being a Muslim. He was horrified that I was Muslim. And what a horrible mistake he had done in coming to seek treatment with me. So, when he said, I'm no longer afraid of being a Jew, I said, you're sounding like Richard Nixon. So he says, you think I am? Still? I said, yes. Sounds like it, the way you're denying it. And I think you're also very ashamed of my being a Muslim. So now, the task we have in front of us is to hold both these hatreds. Your hatred of yourself being a Jew and your hatred of me being a Muslim. Hold them together and see what connections they have with each other. See what do they have to do with each other. Pause. Up to here, the novelist is speaking. And then I said, are they sisters? Now this word, these three words, are they sisters, was not on surface, on intellectual level, logical level, didn't add anything. I had already said, how are these two shames related to each other? What do they have to do with each other? Your shame at your being Jew and your shame at my being Muslim. So in a way, on surface it doesn't add anything. The novelist had already spoken, but the poet added, are they sisters? Now, I presented this example in a study group in New York, and a person, American analyst, said, why did you bring in women? In the session there were two men. Why didn't you say, are they brothers? And I was shocked. I had not thought of it. It came out of me like a poem, utterly spontaneously, are they sisters? The New York analyst asked me, why did you not say, are they brothers? Because after all, there are two men sitting in the room. So the reason, as I thought, was because in my mother tongue, sharm or haya are both feminine words. Because in my mother tongue, Urdu, all words are gendered. And sharm is female and haya is female. So I was trying to bring them together. But the fact that just at that time, my language regressed and reappeared, contaminated or informed by Urdu, shows that there was a deep empathy and deep connectedness in the patient and me, and I was trying to show that there was something organically, fundamentally same in his hating himself and his hating me. That is the same thing. It's like two sisters. It's like twins. And that's why the word came, are they sisters? One last example. Sometimes the poet speaks first. I have a patient who's highly accomplished. Her husband is highly accomplished. Her father is highly accomplished. Her mother is highly accomplished. She has two kids, one boy, one girl. She hates herself. She hates herself. And she hates her boy. She has equally dire predictions about herself and equally dire predictions about the boy. She has equally nasty, scornful and contemptuous judgments of the boy as she has of herself. While actually she is very fine worker and fine accomplished person. But she hates herself and she hates the boy. These are people, father, mother, and the patient's father and mother. These are all people who have gone to the top-notch colleges and universities of United States. Very educated people, very accomplished people. She predicts the boy is in 11th grade. So after 12th grade, he'll go to college. She predicts he'll not finish high school. He'll drop out next year. She predicts that if he even finishes 12th grade, he will go to a 2-year-old college, not 4-year-old college, 2-year-old college, and he will not graduate from there. She predicts that he'll become 35 years old and is staying in the basement, just masturbating, watching porn or smoking pot. She predicts that he will always be unemployed. She predicts that he will most likely commit suicide. These are her predictions about her own firstborn son. She hates him and she hates herself. And the hatred goes back and forth. One session is filled with her description of how much self-loathing she has. One session is filled with how much hatred she has for the son. Goes back and forth, back and forth. On the other hand, she also drops in here and there, here and there, here and there, hints that the boy is doing extremely well in school. His teachers love him. And he's very, very loved by his teachers. He gets very good grades with very little effort. One day, we keep working with this. What is this hatred about of herself, where it comes from, what purpose is it serving now, how is this projected onto the sun, and so on and so forth. This goes on and on and on and on and on. But the ghost has her. She's trapped and haunted by this. One day, she goes on to tell me that the son will do nothing, be unemployed, remain in the basement forever, and so on and so forth. And out of the blue, completely unknown to me, and out of my control, I say the following. I said, you know what? I also have a prediction for your son. She said, like what? I said, I think 15, 16 years from now, he will be an associate professor of mathematics in University of Michigan. He'll be living near the campus. He'll have a girlfriend who will be Japanese, and she will be 12 years older than him. The patient is utterly shocked, as I am. As I am. The patient is utterly shocked, as I am. And the patient says, What? What did you say? How did you come up with this? I said, I do not know. I do not know. But if you permit me a minute or two's silence, I think I can find out. She said, yes, please. So we remained silent. She remained silent. I remained silent. And then I spoke. Here the poet has already spoken. Now is the turn for the novelist. I said, look, notice what I said. I said he will be associate professor. Mathematics, because you told me that he is good with numbers. Associate professor. I did not make him assistant professor. I didn't make him full professor. I made him midway. You and your husband and your mother and father have gone to the top-notch university in USA. And you were sending him to a bullshit 2-year college. So between that Ivy League Mecca of USA and this bullshit school you were sending him, I found midway, University of Michigan. 2. 3, I didn't send him to California or Oregon or to Washington State that far. I sent him only up to Michigan. So away from Philadelphia, but not that far away. And then I put him that he'll be living near the campus, because separation is not easy for him. Then I gave him a girlfriend, Japanese, because you have driven him so much up the wall by so much criticism that I doubt that he can kiss and sleep with and make love to a Jewish woman. So I gave him a Japanese girlfriend. But the mother hunger will remain in him, so I made her 12 years older. Now this whole rant, you can call it rationalization, is the task of the novelist, giving coherence and method to an interpretation, as against an inspired moment of madness, which is divine, to which, if you are a true analyst, just like if you are a true poet, if you are a true painter, if you are a true dancer, you have to submit. Even in playing cricket, we play according to rules, but not only according to rules. Auden has said, W.H. Auden, there's no creativity without audacity. There's no creativity without audacity, and Winnicott has given it anchor by saying, there's no originality except on the basis of a tradition. I don't think that I could have thought this interpretation if I wanted to think it. I don't think so. It had to come in an inspired way. I don't think I would have uttered such things 20 years ago. I think it has taken 50, 60 years of clinical experience and every week of reading between 50 to 100 pages of psychoanalysis over 60 years. And having conducted many, many analyses and supervised many. That has given me the confidence to even allow myself this moment of madness. And many others I could give, but I think we are running out of time. So what I have tried essentially to convey to you are basically, as they say, take home bullet points. So this is Novelist's job. One, psychoanalysis is not some kind of mysterious, obscure, obsolete bullshit. It's a kind of psychotherapy. It is not like what Freud used to do. That was then, where body was primary, mind was secondary. Now we know mind is primary, body is secondary. And only finding the cause is not curative. Of course not. Oh, I drink so much because my mother died. That's not going to do anything. Zero. It has to be here and now. The ghost has to be here, and not only the dread of the ghost, not only the torment inflicted upon one's soul by the ghost, by the fucking love of the ghost is also analyzed. The fact that one is trapped in that bondage with one's neurosis, and one is subservient and enjoying that subservience masochistically, that has to be spoiled and broken. This is a kind of psychotherapy for which some time is needed, some attention is needed, some anonymity, some neutrality, some abstinence, some patience, a lot of patience is needed. And in the end, what is needed is love between the patient and the doctor, and non-exploitative tenderness that exists between us and our sons and daughters. Same kind of love. Every patient in the end is my child. And just like my children, who are now this big, meaning quite old, but they're still my children. I don't treat them like children, but certainly they're my kids, and I am their father, and I keep them in my mind that way. Same way, every patient is my child. How can it be otherwise? How could it be otherwise? And they are my child forever. So, what I have tried to convey is that in psychoanalysis, we bring a simple self, a complex self, a novelist self, and a poet self. And the patient brings his mad parts and his sane parts, his ethos and his pathos. It's a complex ensemble. It's a complex symphony. It's a big multi-starrer dance. Adam Limentani, an Italian-British psychoanalyst who was the president of IPA, has said it the best. Psychoanalysis is an art. Psychoanalysis is an art, and therefore it needs discipline. Thank you very much.
Chairpersons to facilitate our speaker for today.
Since then, I've been listening about Dr. Salman Akhtar. Salman Akhtar ऐसा बोलते थे, वो ऐसा करते थे, वो ये करते हैं, वो करते हैं. And over the last few years, I've had the opportunity to listen to his talks and attend his workshops. Even my children, both daughters, have attended his 2-day workshops in Nagpur, Mumbai, and Delhi. And all of us would agree that the theme of our conference is very well exemplified by Dr. Salman Akhtar's talk, that it is not bridging psychiatry and art, it is integrating, amalgamating art and science, emotions and logic, novel and poems. Thank you, sir. Dr. P.K. Singh.
Well, the music and melody of today's presentation has made us speechless. We feel very fortunate and privileged to have a chance to listen to you, and also very honored that in the tradition of Gurukul we'll say that you are our elder Guru Bhai. So it's because we share we share the same teachers. Finally, I will just say that there is a line of Vidyapati probably, Tohar saris ek toh madhav. O Lord Krishna, you are the only one like yourself. So, dear Professor Salman Akhtar, you are the only one like yourself, and we will all very cherish to be and follow your path. Thank you.
We request the chairperson to felicitate our keynote speaker, our star speaker for today, Professor Salman Akhtar.
नहीं करना बैठे आपके नहीं
Blue pottery is also
आपके मायके के पड़ोस से
blue pottery is also being crafted in Jaipur.
ब्लू पॉटरी आप देखो
Not of Istanbul, yeah.
फोटो लिया नहीं दो नहीं बस
We request Dr. Vinay Kumar sir to facilitate our chairperson.